I hold myself back usually, but I really like it. This is a great space to push back on that narrative because it is really a frustrating narrative to me is like, A, who is a local? And B, why does being a local give you extra authority to have ownership over certain spaces in the city? Like, not to be super meta about it, but it is like, why should you get access to things in the city that are awesome and I shouldn't because I moved here 4 years ago? Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Dose of Dutch podcast. I'm Hannah Terry, your host, and today I decided we would do something a little bit different. Usually I interview different guests from around The Hague, but I realized that we kind of jumped into that without explaining who I am. So we're going to take a step back and do a little solo episode where I give you a bit of my story, how I got to The Hague, and how I started building the Dose of Dutch brand. And then I also asked on my Instagram for some questions that you have. So I'll be answering some questions that the listeners have about all things Dose of Dutch, The Hague, life in general. And let's get into it. Who am I and how did I get to The Hague? I moved to the Netherlands in 2022. But we have to go back a little bit to 2021. I was a senior in university in Kentucky. So I was born and raised in Kentucky in the US. And I ended up going to university also at a very small school in the middle of Kentucky. And our senior year was kind of approaching, and that's kind of the time where you're like, what am I going to do with my life after I graduate? And I wanted to go to law school, actually. So I had taken all the exams. Hello, Elle Woods. I was like, I'm going to go to law school. But in the meantime, I wanted to have a little bit of fun. So I thought I'm going to take a few years off and go do something else. And I want to move abroad. So the options for moving abroad were kind of either teach English in another country, or you could get different grants that were given out by the US government or private funders to study abroad or live abroad and work. So I started like kind of throwing myself into applying for all of these different grants, and I ended up getting one. It was through my local Rotary Club. So that is like a philanthropic, I should know more about them because they funded me, but they're a philanthropic club. And they funded me for a year of studying any master's degree outside of North America for 1 year. So I had a few kind of ideas in mind of the types of programs I was looking for, but I knew that it had to be 1 year, it had to be taught in English, and I wanted it to be somewhere like a little bit different. So a lot of people with this grant would go to London, and I was like, no, I want to do something else. And so I really looked at the 3 major political cities in Europe. So I thought Brussels, Geneva, or The Hague. And unfortunately, my French is not good. So I thought Brussels and Geneva would probably not be the best places for me to base myself. And that's basically how I came to the idea of moving to The Hague. But then, so the program I wanted was actually in Rotterdam at Erasmus University. And I'm looking on the map and I was like, well, these are basically in the same city. Like, how different can it really be? So I will move to Rotterdam. And then hopefully after I might be able to get a job in The Hague. Maybe I'll stay for a year. I knew that there was a visa for like students to have a year following their studies. So I remember moving away, like telling my parents, I'll be back in 2 years tops, maybe even just 1 year. Let's see how everything goes. And I still had my idea to go to law school. So actually on my first date with my partner, I told him like, yeah, I'm here now, but like I'm going back to the US and I'm going to law school. You can see where that has ended up, but that was still kind of like my intention moving here was like, oh, it would be a cool place to live for a bit. And like, this is going to look great on my law school resume. So that was how I ended up in Rotterdam in 2022. And then I immediately kind of fell in love with The Hague. I started coming to The Hague that autumn and was like, okay, Rotterdam is cool, but I really felt like The Hague was more my place. And so I started interning in The Hague. My partner, then I met him and he lived in The Hague, and it all kind of just snowballed from there. It was very clear to me that at the end of my 1-year master's, I would move to The Hague. And I ended up moving here in the fall of 2023. And so I had really kind of built up this image of the city. Even like being in Rotterdam, I still had like romanticized, maybe over romanticized The Hague. And I was like, it's going to be amazing when I move there. I'm going to finally be like in the city and like find people there that I like really get along with. And for the first like year, I would say I was like not disappointed, but I was not super attached to the city. I didn't really feel like I had found a good community. I had joined a book club and I still knew some people around, but it wasn't like it wasn't a click at first. I was very much like, okay, I romanticized this place for a really long time and then I'm finally here and it's like, okay. But that's when I kind of realized, and I talked about this in episode 1 with Francine about like I needed to get out of my little bubble and just take my camera out and start exploring, start finding new places. I was also looking at like, do I want to leave and move abroad? Do I want to buy an apartment? Those were two extremes. And somehow that was like kind of the rationale was like, I could like leave the country or I could buy an apartment here. And so I was really trying to figure out like, let me go out and really put some effort into exploring this city. So I started doing that. And that's when things really, I think, started to click for me. I got out of the like city center bubble and started to just find all of these new spots. And I was like, where have these been hiding? I started seeing like posters for events and I mean, sue me, I'm a social media girl, but like I would never see these things on social media. And I would see the most beautifully designed poster like in the window of a shop. And I would be like, well, never would have found out about this if I had not been out here in this like smaller neighborhood in The Hague. And so I started to kind of be like, well, this is weird that there is so much to explore, but people aren't finding it. Me being people, like as someone who was really like for a year trying to like figure the city out, I just was not getting it. And so it took me like physically going out into different parts of the city to start feeling connected to it. And I thought that was quite a shame. Like I had stuck it out because I had a partner here and I had a good job and I had romanticized the city for so long, but I knew there were a lot of people who were probably moving to The Hague and then immediately leaving to go to Amsterdam or to go to Utrecht because they couldn't really find their place in the city. And so this was all happening alongside of me finding out that I had to have 3 big knee surgeries. So I was like, I finally feel connected to this city and I feel so good about it. And then my doctor was like, and surprise, you're going to need like 2 years of like intense rehab and really like a lot of months sitting on my couch. So that is actually when the idea of Dose of Dutch kind of came to me. And I was like, how can I use this time to like my best advantage? It's like, I'm going to be on my phone a lot, so I might as well take all these pictures that I've taken and all the places I've discovered and put into a Google Maps and kind of like merge them into some sort of social media page. So I was really like sitting on my couch, not able to go out and explore the city, but using that kind of resource bank of like 6 months of just information and pictures. It was very like actually quite sad because I was just sitting on my couch with my leg propped up, like 5 ways that you can have fun in The Hague this weekend, as I cannot have fun really in The Hague. But it was really great. I mean, honestly, if I hadn't had this knee surgery, I think I don't know if I ever would have started the page. So it actually was like something that I think was very formative for me. But I also, so that's kind of the like thinking behind it. But I was also pretty strategic I'm a very like analytical, strategic person. And so I also wanted the social media page to be like successful. So I kind of was like, how can I build this in a way that's helpful for people and also emulates what has already been done in other cities? Because I was looking at all these accounts in Amsterdam that were hyping up Amsterdam and all these accounts in like Utrecht and Brussels. And I was like, well, I can do this for The Hague. Like it's not rocket science. And so I had all these accounts that I really admired. And I was like, I'm going to start doing that for our city, because there are a lot of things that deserve to be hyped up or highlighted. There's a lot of events going on, and they apparently only put up physical posters. And later I started to realize, like, well, my algorithm was just not trained to show me stuff from The Hague. And now obviously it is. But it was a really interesting way. Like, I started a whole new page that was completely blank. And I just kind of started training the algorithm on like The Hague, Den Haag, which it really worked because my other account was very personal. It was just things that were going on with my high school friends, my college friends. And so to start over and have kind of a fresh place to like say, this is my interest and this is what I want to learn more about, also opened up a lot more exploring for me to do. So when I got off the couch after my surgeries, that was like a whole world had opened up for me. And it's kind of hard to believe this was all last year. So there was even a moment like a year and a half ago where I was wondering if I belonged in The Hague, if I should stay here, if I should move. And obviously a lot has changed since then, which is just like a really nice reflection. I think that like, even if right now it doesn't feel like you're in the right place or doing the right thing, like there's always an opportunity to turn that around. If you have a shitty situation like a knee surgery, there's always something you can do to kind of capitalize on that. That sounds like the wrong word, but I don't know. It's just really nice to reflect back actually on the past, like where I was 2 years ago versus where I am now, and to see that growth that's happened. And like, I genuinely have fallen in love with The Hague, but that's possible for anyone. That's not like something that only I can do, which is the reason I started this page. I think The Hague is a city where there's so much opportunity and there's so much space for so many people that like, not physically, but like there is so much space for creating, finding groups of people, starting something new. I think that there is like, sometimes The Hague, we're a little bit behind sometimes, but that is a great thing, I think, because a year and a half ago, there were like not really people creating content about the city. And now there's a whole group of amazing content creators that are making content, highlighting the city, putting The Hague on the international map, which I think is something to nod towards. Everybody can do this. And it's also, this is a kind of side note, but I really hate the competition in the content creator field. Like, I think it is the most annoying thing about being a content creator is finding other people who feel like they're competing with you. And it just feels like a competition. It's like, the internet is actually infinitely large. I don't understand how the cloud works, but from my understanding, I'm pretty sure there's enough room for 1,000 The Hague content creators. And every time I see a new account popping up to talk about The Hague, it makes me so happy because I'm like, yes, more people highlighting the city. That is amazing. And so, yeah, that's my little side note rant about how I think like being competitive and annoying about it is just the most, it's a downer. Like, it's a community, it's a city that we all love. And so why wouldn't we be excited that more and more people are wanting to highlight it? Sometimes also I think people are a little nervous about starting. I obviously was. That was one of the questions in the question box. So I can come back to that. But I think that if something's holding you back, like not having the right equipment or not having the right space, like there are places in The Hague, like Studio Point of View, where I am right now, that have the professional technicalities to help you start. So for me, I had always kind of had it in my mind, like a podcast would be really cool, but I cannot film a podcast in my living room. And that's like why a space like Studio Point of View is perfect, because it is a fully equipped podcast studio. So I encourage you to like go out and look for places like this that can help you start, because sometimes the scariest part is just like getting the support and the space needed to actually make a start. I mean, at home, I use one of those tiny like 10 euro mics, and like this mic is actually like the mic that Michael Jackson used in Thriller, not the actual music video, but like this is the brand of mic that he was using. So they have really high quality equipment that is going to help you actually come across as very professional and make it a lot easier to produce your content. Okay, and that's enough monologuing. Well, I guess the whole episode is monologue, but now I'm going to go into some of the questions that you all submitted into the Instagram box. So I first up have the biggest difference between life in the US and in the Netherlands, and what do you appreciate about both or miss from both? It is a bit of a difficult question to answer because I moved to the Netherlands when I was 22. So sometimes I go back and forth between like, is this just a reality of like being an adult versus being a student and teenager? And like, or do I just, do I love living in a city or do I love living in a Dutch city? But I think there are some big differences on a very like meta level that I really care about now. So the quality of life, everything from like work-life balance, healthcare. I just talked about how I had 3 knee surgeries and I'm not bankrupt, which is very important to me. Having a good like social safety net and social system and just access to like public transportation that's good, but also being able to bike everywhere is very helpful. And like not having it such a car dependent country is really something that I've learned that I really care about. There's also such good food here. When I was in the US in May, I brought back my favorite childhood snack and I was so excited to like have it when I was in the Netherlands again. And that whole week that I was munching on it, there were Twizzlers. So the little Twizzlers are like red licorice and they're like just a very over processed, let's put it that way, red licorice. And I was eating these Twizzlers every night in the Netherlands and my stomach was just hurting so badly. And after a few nights, I was like, I think the Twizzlers are hurting my stomach. And my partner was like, probably, which is really sad now that some of the food that I grew up loving actually really hurts my body. But I've started to realize the quality of food here is just that much better that when I go back to the States, I can't eat the same things I used to eat because my food tolerance is just the quality of food that I eat here is so much higher. Driving everywhere in the US, you don't realize how much time you spend commuting in a car. And while I do miss the ability to like go out on a drive, I'm from Kentucky. There's just rolling hills and horses, and it is beautiful to like go out, listen to music at sunset. That is something I miss, but I don't miss having to drive. So being a necessity to drive 20 minutes to school, to drive 20 minutes to work, to drive 20 minutes to a grocery store. So I really love that in the Netherlands, I rarely am in a car. And when I am, it's usually like out of like we're buying a rug or we have something like really large to be like moving, but it's not a necessity. You can really do life without a car here, which is really nice. Biking culture is not as scary as people like to make it seem. I talked to a lot of people who are really nervous about getting on a bike here, and I think The Hague is a perfect place to start biking. I don't know if I've biked in Amsterdam. Maybe I have, but The Hague is really like, it's very chill. Also, if you don't speak Dutch, they cannot yell something at you that will hurt your feelings. So when I first moved here, I would hear people yelling at me while I was biking and I was like, I don't speak Dutch. Like, you can't hurt me. But I didn't know. I was like, maybe they're not yelling at me or maybe they're yelling something really nice. Like, you look beautiful today. I have a feeling they were not yelling nice things, but it's a great place to learn because even if they yell at you in Dutch, you really don't know what they're saying. So they can't hurt you. And it's really just not a city that it's not too overwhelming to bike here. I think it's the best way to get around. And I really encourage you to just get on a bike as soon as you get here. It makes it so much easier and less daunting. Yeah. When I first came here, I got a bike from a used bike shop, but I didn't really know about Marktplaats at that point. So Marktplaats is an online marketplace app where you can buy used goods. So if you are looking for a bike when you first get here, it's a great place to look. I will say sometimes going to a bike shop is nice because they are able to tell you how tall the bike should be. And then maybe you don't buy it from them. You can go look on Marktplaats yourself. But I always get a bit confused about the frame sizing and I'm this tall, so the bike should be this tall. So I do recommend going to talk to someone in person, but there are a lot of bike shops that sell used bikes around the city. And a used bike is perfectly fine for getting you around. So, but bike culture is real here. The cars are meant to go around bikers. And so I think that's also, even when you're taught to drive, when you're taught to open your driver's door, it would open over a bike path, but people are taught to check their shoulder for bikers. So I feel very safe biking here as well, because I know that drivers are taught with bikers in mind, whereas in other places, drivers are taught to drive and not to be aware of bikes. So I feel very safe biking here because of that. And there are also like, I drive just a normal bike, but there are bikes that have huge like buckets on front with children in them. There are bikes with like little sidecars. There are tandem bikes. So it's always a spectacle, the types of bikes you can see. And I also, a lot of people talk about getting their bikes stolen. And I had this once, I thought. So I showed up after work to the station and my bike was gone. And I texted my partner and I was like, my bike was stolen. This is so annoying. And he was like, well, where did you park it? And I showed him and he said, that's that's like not a legal place to park. So maybe we should check the bike depot website. And I was like, what is the bike depot website? Turns out, if you are parked illegally, there are bike police who, excuse me if that's not their actual name, there are bike police who will come around and they will take a picture of your bike exactly where it is. And then they will take the bike and they will upload it to a website and it will have a perfect description, like found at the Hague HS. It's a black bike with this shape and it has a bucket on it. And so you can go to the website and type in all your bike details and then voila, there was my bike. It had been stolen by the bike police for being illegally parked. So I shouldn't say it was stolen. It was reprimanded by the government. And then I had to go to the bike depot and pay a fine. And then I got my bike back. So it was actually really nice though, because in my head, my bike had been stolen and I was going to have to buy a new one, which would have been like at least 100 euros. And in the end, I think I paid a 25 euro fine and I got my bike back. So that was a great story. But I think people don't know about this because I always wonder how many people think their bike has been stolen, but actually it was parked illegally. So the government took it and they have a fine, but the government has no way to contact you if your bike is illegally parked. So you just have to know about this magical website. I'll link it in the caption because I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but it was a really funny experience because I was convinced that I was a victim of bike theft. And in reality, it was the Dutch government, who are very organized. I'll give them that. Yeah. People also don't care if you drive like a really nice bike. Honestly, I think if you're first moving here, you do not get a nice bike. Like just buy anything. It could be junk on wheels. And as long as it gets you from point A to point B, people do not care. There's no like showing off that you have a really fancy bike. It's just a matter of being practical. And as long as it gets you from A to B, it's a great bike. That was a little bit of a detour, but I feel like bikes are something that a lot of people want to know about in the Netherlands. And if you happen to be a bike professional and you want to come on the podcast and explain a lot more to me, that would probably be really nice. Okay, next question. Any tips for moving to The Hague as a mature student? Someone in their 30s. I'll admit, I'm not in my 30s and I'm not a student anymore, but I was a student, so I can speak a little bit about this. But I think actually moving as a student makes things a lot easier in terms of visa, bureaucracy. The university helps you a lot. So I actually found it a really nice pathway into the Dutch systems because you are kind of eased in with the help of the university. So on a very practical level, I think moving as a student is really nice. But on a personal level, it is something that I would encourage you to kind of get out of the university bubble if possible, because if you are intending to stay for longer than just 1 year, I don't know how long your study is, but if your study is 1 year like mine was, but you're intending to stay longer, it's better to kind of find your people and put your roots down outside of the university as well, because you won't be in the university forever. And then there are a lot of different ways you can do that. I mean, even if you are a student and you're studying, there are a lot of events you can go to. There are communities like the Hague Creators, which in episode 1, we talked about with Francine. There are a lot of different groups that you can join. I think it's a really nice way to enter the city is like you are students, so you do have some more flexible time than if you're working a 9 to 5. So I would encourage you to also invest time into like enjoying the city, not just studying. Maybe that's a maybe that's a biased answer. Don't let your professors hear that. But I think it's also important to enjoy your time in the city, whether you're staying here or not after. And there are a lot of great resources. So doing your research ahead of time is really helpful. I can drop some links in the show notes, but there are a few different websites that can really help you and also like provide updates in English for news articles to read, and just very practical tips. I think I moved here actually, I was kind of off the grid the entire summer before I moved to Rotterdam. And so I kind of just jumped in feet first and was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. But luckily I had a roommate who was very organized. And so she was kind of like 2 steps ahead of me the whole time. But I think it's a very exciting time to be about to move to The Hague. Actually, when people message me and say like, I'm going to be in The Hague in like 2 months, or I'm moving in a few days, I'm always like, like it's such a nice feeling to be able to experience all of these things for the first time. And I can't do that anymore. So I'm living through all of you, and that you get to kind of like experience all of these places and things and experience the city for the first time. That's just such a nice moment. And I think like cherish it, because in a year you're going to be like, you're going to be a proper Hague person and you're going to know all the spots. And so those first few months are a really, really exciting time. Another question is, do you ever get pushbacks from locals? And thank you to the person who submitted this question for putting locals in quotation marks, because that's kind of how I feel. Is like, who is a local? Is a local someone who was born and raised here? Is a local someone who's lived here for 15 years? Is a local, I don't know. And I think it's such a shame when people say like certain spots are for locals, or people, I mean, you know, the internet, everyone is there. And there are always people commenting like, this spot is just for locals, or like, can you please not share these things? Like some things are just for locals. And I hold myself back usually, but I really like it. This is a great space to push back on that narrative, because it is really a frustrating narrative to me. Is like, A, who is a local? And B, why does being a local give you extra authority to have ownership over certain spaces in the city? Like, not to be super meta about it, but it is like, why should you get access to things in the city that are awesome and I shouldn't because I moved here 4 years ago? Like, I think that sometimes people have a bit of an arrogance about them because they were born here. And so they think that they deserve extra rights, or they deserve to know about certain spots. But I think that's such a sad perspective to have. Like, if you have something that you think is amazing, a business that you think is amazing, a spot that you think is great, and you don't want to share it with others, A, that is very selfish. And B, I think that's such a shame for the business owners, that you're like, I love your spot, I'm never going to tell anyone about it. Like, if I owned a cafe, I would want the opposite. Like, if you love my spot, you should please share it. And I think that a city is a public good. Like, we live in a city together, and that is public good. And so to be gatekeeping things, I mean, obviously I'm not a gatekeeper. My whole platform has been built off of sharing different tips and spots, but I can't even comprehend having the perspective of these people who are saying like, don't share this, don't share that. Why would you say this? Like, you're exposing my favorite spot. And I'm like, sorry. Like, I just think that I have way more empathy for people who move to The Hague and don't experience it because everything is being gatekept. And I think that's such a shame that people will land here and then after a year they move to Amsterdam because they never really found the true heart of The Hague. And I think that it is a much better perspective to kind of have that openness and that willingness to share the spots in the city with everybody, because at the end of the day, that's what makes the city thrive. That's what contributes to the economy of the city. That's what makes the city develop further, is that there are people who are interested in coming here and staying here and are wanting to make it better and build it into a more exciting city. And so, yes, to answer your question, I do get pushback from people who are wanting me to gatekeep things, I guess. But I also sometimes am like, this spot is very popular. This was a whole thing with Heart Beach. Heart Beach is a beach club. I would say one of the most popular beach clubs on the beach. And someone commented and said, like, please don't share this. Heart Beach is for the locals. And I was like, babe, Heart Beach is not like, it's not a secret. Everyone knows about it. So it's also quite funny to think about what people consider like, what people think is undiscovered. And again, like, not to harp on this, but like, when you say like a certain space is only for the locals, what are you implying? That you don't want immigrants in that space? Like, no, let's not, I won't get too deeply into that, but I think it's a very frustrating narrative. And no gatekeeping here. Next question. I really like this one because it actually is pushing me to think, and I think it's not positively framed, which is important. I like a little tension. The question is, why does community need to be monetized? Doesn't that defeat the purpose of community? And I think that that's really interesting. So for one, I run a WhatsApp community, and I call that a community because that is the name of the function on WhatsApp. But let's be honest, it's a group chat. It's a giant group chat. But that is free. So there are a lot of people who create a community that is paywalled, and then you would have to kind of pay to have access to this sort of WhatsApp community that I have. And I haven't done that. No shade against anybody who does do that. But for me, I do think that the group is kind of a public good. It is something that I think is not something I would monetize at the moment, just because it is a space for people to just meet. But that being said, I think we have to be realistic about what community is. Is community a 2,000 person WhatsApp chat? No. This WhatsApp chat, the goal of it is to be a touch point for people to find their communities. So it is a place where you can join a group called Tennis Girls, and then maybe you meet a core group of people and you go play tennis with them and you kind of start your own little community. But I don't really view this place as one community. I view it as a place so that you can come in and be connected to multiple types of communities. So I think that's a really important distinction. And that kind of rolls into my next point with events, which is what I think the question was kind of getting at, is that I do sell tickets to events. And for me, I don't brand my events as community. I brand them as events. You're getting a ticket to a place and a service. And I don't really want it to be a place where it's the same people showing up week after week. Like a run club, a book club, those to me are communities, because those are places where you can show up and know that some familiar faces will be there, and you're kind of building a community. And those things I think shouldn't really be monetized, which is why there is no Dose of Dutch Book Club or Run Club at the moment, because I don't have capacity to do something that is not making at least a little bit of profit. But on the other hand, my events, I want them to be actually spaces where you might buy a ticket to 2 or 3 events, and then I never see you at an event again, because you came, you found people you connected with, and then now you all have started your own group. And so I really view these events as not like the same faces, but it really should be something like, oh yeah, I'm really looking for a group of people to connect with. I'm going to go to an event that Dose of Dutch is putting on, and then I'm able to kind of meet people, and like we can spin off into our own thing. I think that these events are more of that rather than a community. And the events are twofold. So on the one hand, they are meant to connect people and have them meet each other. And on the other hand, I want the events to be held in local businesses that I find really inspiring. I want them to be at like a ceramics workshop or a yoga studio I really love, or working with an artist in a gallery. And so I also believe in rewarding those people for their hard work. I'm not going to go to these local businesses and ask them to offer space or offer food for free, because I think that they deserve to be paid for their work. And so I hope that people know, when you buy a ticket to my event, you are buying a ticket that contributes into the local economy. Like, you are helping these local businesses that I find really inspiring, and I hope you do too. But this is kind of my thought behind monetizing, I guess, is that I believe in also paying people for their hard work and for their businesses. And so I think I think that answers the question a bit. And it's definitely really interesting though, because I think there are aspects of community that should probably not be monetized, and that might reveal why I don't do certain things. There's a lot online that is marketing and paid, and there's subscriptions. And so I also never want anyone to feel pressured to buy a ticket to an event I host. That's why the WhatsApp community is free, and you are free to organize and promote your own things in there. But it is also the reality of owning a business. I think sometimes people forget Dose of Dutch started as a business, and I actually started as an influencer. At the KVK, which is where you kind of register your business and what you're under, I am registered as an influencer, not as a community, because at the end of the day, that is my business model. So it's also an interesting kind of topic that I am a businesswoman. I make profit. Surprise, surprise. But that is something that I think people maybe are uncomfortable with, but it is something that I have learned to be more comfortable with and excited about over the past 6 months, because it's something I've grown into, is realizing that making money is not something I should be ashamed of or feel guilty about. If I'm offering a service and I'm doing the work, then I deserve to be compensated for it. And this actually leads into my next question, which is really sweet. Halfway through 2026, what is the biggest lesson of the year so far? I really love that question. I think for me, it's actually been being surrounded more by entrepreneurial women and women who own businesses, because I never really considered myself a business owner in a sense, especially because I don't have a physical business. And so for me, it felt like the first time I was invited to a entrepreneurial workshop, I was like, but I'm not an entrepreneur. And they were like, yes, you are. And I even will tell, at first I was very hesitant to say I'm a business owner, but I had to kind of start to realize yeah, I do have a business and I offer services, and at the end of the day, I do make money. And that's something that was really difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around. Also because my parents are educators, so they are kind of working in public service. They do work in public service. And I always have worked for or interned for nonprofits. So I really have never been surrounded by people who are talking about money so openly, talking about making money. And I think for a long time, it made me uncomfortable. And it also made me uncomfortable to hear people online talking about money, to even be it just is something that is not natural for me. And so over the past 6 months, I would say I've been in more spaces where I'm hearing these women that I really look up to talk about it super frankly. And I'm like, this is not a taboo subject. Actually, that is the patriarchy telling me you should not be talking about money. Don't talk about these things. And in reality, women, especially women, we need to be talking about money. We need to be talking about what we're doing to grow businesses and to scale and to do things, to be smart with your money, but also to be realistic with your business. And I think it's been really actually fun for me to start to lean into that side of my kind of brain, and on a influencing side of things, working with my management team to say these are the goals I have. So how can we get there? And how can negotiating is something that I was not very comfortable with. And now I'm starting to feel more comfortable and feel more okay with asking for money, because I am offering a service to people. And I think that's something that is really interesting. And it just didn't come very naturally to me. And so I think if that's you right now, you're listening to this, yeah, I also feel very uncomfortable with these things. I think it's really nice to surround yourself by women who are maybe a little bit more mature in their businesses than you, and to look up to them and to talk to them about these things and to be open. I'm always very surprised with how open other people are with me. I think it's something that you can put out is I'm very open with others, so then they are open back to me. And it's really nice to have these conversations with, I'll be honest, powerful women who are encouraging me that no, you can talk about this. Don't be ashamed of making money. Don't be ashamed of being able to make a profit, because that's actually something to be proud of. But I think I've been kind of conditioned to believe I shouldn't be I shouldn't be making a profit off of views. In reality, like, yeah, that's okay. That's good. And so it's been very interesting to kind of grow in that more business side of myself. And I really enjoyed it, actually. It's been something that it's got me thinking in different ways and trying to understand. Of course, it's not all about making money. I don't want to make it sound like that, but it is about feeling comfortable as someone who owns a business in having these conversations, and also recognizing that sometimes a goal of mine could be to be making a certain amount of money. That's a completely fine goal to have. So yeah, I would say that's been a big growth point for me in the past year. And that's been a big thing that I've grown in so far in 2026. And I'm really excited to keep having these conversations and keep stretching that part of my brain for the rest of the year. Final question is The Hague having a moment?
We were in The Hague, which I'll be honest, I'm naive. I didn't know what it was.
Okay,
I thought it was going to be like West Point, like a building.
Yes.
There's The Hague where they have trials and all that. It's the most beautiful town.
Wait, do we have to move to The Hague?
It's unbelievable. And everybody's on bikes. And
wait, so are we moving?
I think maybe.
I think there's been a lot of online chatter, especially in the past few months, about The Hague. And yeah, I think we are having a moment. I think it is time that The Hague has a moment. Obviously, I've been hyping up The Hague, but it's so exciting to see that other people are starting to talk about it. I think for the political dorks like me who have always been obsessed with The Hague, with the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice, these kind of institutions have made The Hague always very enticing to a very international crowd. But it's really interesting to see the more like pop culture of it all pull The Hague up. It's really nice. I think people are recognizing that sometimes the capital cities are a little bit big, and people are wanting to travel to new places that are a little bit less discovered through a tourist lens. So everybody goes to Amsterdam, but like, who's going to The Hague? Like, that is the fun of it all. And so I think it's been really fun to see The Hague get that kind of hype, and I hope we see more of it. It's very exciting, and I think that there are more and more people who are starting to recognize that the quality of life in The Hague is really high. You have the beach, you have the dunes, you have the city. And if you want to go to Amsterdam, it's a 40-minute train ride away. It's not that far, but you can also buy an apartment in The Hague really much more affordably. You can actually eat out in a much more affordable way. You can go to a cafe on Saturday morning and there's not a line out the door unless it's Bartien. It's Bartien. I should have given context. Which is a great spot. Okay. You can go to a cafe on Saturday morning and there's not a long line out the door unless it's Bartien on Piet Heinstadt, which is a really great bakery and they deserve all the hype. But you can just pop in somewhere more spontaneously. That's something I've always loved about The Hague, is that you can be more spontaneous and like see a bar or a terrace that you're like, oh, this is really cute. Let's stop here and have a drink. And there's no reservation needed. You can just walk up. I have been in Amsterdam multiple times where I'm like, oh, what a cozy like pizza place. Let's have dinner here. And we walk in and they're like, you needed to make a reservation 2 weeks ago. I'm like, I'm sorry. Sue me for wanting to be spontaneous. So I think that The Hague has these like, it has great spots, but they're not so busy. You're able to kind of still enjoy the city without having to plan out every single reservation. I mean, The Hague is the third largest city in the Netherlands. So there's Amsterdam that everyone knows internationally. There's also Rotterdam, which a lot of people are keen to go to. If they don't want to go to Amsterdam, they immediately think Rotterdam is the place. But The Hague kind of still has that charm and the coziness that Amsterdam offers. But it also it's more than just a criminal court. It's more than just the political scene, which is a really fun scene. But it can also just be a really great place to live, to go to the beach, but be able to also get to the airport really easily, get to other big cities easily. I think it's really finally starting to be recognized as a good place to locate yourself. And if you're looking to move to The Hague, I'm so excited for you. Don't let me be the one to completely sell it to you. Come visit, kind of get a feel for the city. I think that is the best way to understand where you're moving, is to definitely come visit, feel the city, and you'll know if it's right for you. Okay, I hope I answered some of your questions. That was a lot of me talking, but it feels really nice to kind of chat in this way. I hope you also enjoyed the format. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can like and follow the show. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. We have really exciting guests coming up, and so I hope that you will tune back in. And if you missed the first 4 episodes, lucky you, you have a lot to listen to catch up on. And as always, we're filming here at Studio Point of View in The Hague. It is a full service podcast studio, which has been super lovely. And it's also styled by Hoff Furniture. I hope to see you next week, and let's fall in love with The Hague some more.